Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet. Nashte Prayashu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Reading from chapter 29 of the Srimad Bhagavatam 10th Canto, Krishna and the Gopis meet for the Rasa dance. This chapter describes how Lord Sri Krishna, intending to enjoy the Rasa dance, engaged in arguments and counter-arguments with the Gopis. Then there is a description of the beginning of the Rasa dance and the Lord's pastime of disappearing from the midst of the Gopis. Remembering the premise he had made to the Gopis when he had stolen their clothes, Lord Krishna employed his Yogamaya potency and manifested within himself the desire to enjoy pastimes during an autumn night. Thus, he began to play his flute. When the Gopis heard the flute sound, the impulses of Cupid were violently aroused within them, and they immediately abandoned all their household duties and hastily went to Krishna. All the Gopis had purely spiritual bodies, but when some of the Gopis' husband and other family members stopped the young girls from going, Lord Krishna arranged for them to temporarily exhibit material bodies, which they then left at the sides of their husbands. In this way, they deceived their relatives and went off to meet Krishna. When the Gopis came before Lord Krishna, he asked, "Why have you come? It is not good for you to travel to such a place in the dead of the night, for this forest is full of violent creatures. Your husbands and children will soon come searching for you to bring you home and engage you again in your household duties. After all, the prime religious duty of a woman is to serve her husband and children. For a respectful woman to consort with a paramour is totally contemptible and sure to obstruct her progress to heaven. Moreover, one develops pure love for me not by physical proximity, but by hearing topics connected with me, by viewing my deity form in the temple, by meditating upon me, and by faithfully chanting my glories. Therefore, all of you would do best to return home." The Gopis were crestfallen to hear this, and after crying a little, they replied with a bit of anger, "It is unfair for you to reject young girls who have abandoned everything in their lives to come to you with the exclusive desire to serve you. By serving our husbands and children, we receive only pain, whereas by serving you, the dearest most soul of all living beings, we will perfectly fulfill the true religious duty of the self. What woman will not deviate from her prescribed duties as soon as she hears your flute song and sees your form, which enchants the three worlds? Just as the Supreme Lord Vishnu protects the demigods, you destroy the unhappiness of the people of Vrindavan. Therefore, you should immediately relieve the torment we have felt because of separation from you." Wanting to please the Gopis, Lord Krishna, who is always satisfied in himself, responded to the appeals by playing with them in various pastimes. But when this show of attention made them a little proud, he humbled them by suddenly disappearing from the arena of the Rasa dance. Shri Bhadrayani Ruvacha Bhagavanapitha Ratri Sarodotfulla Mallika Viksharantu Manas Chakre Yogamayam Upashrita. Shri Bhadrayani said, "Shri Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, full in all opulences. Yet, upon seeing those autumn nights scented with blossoming jasmine flowers, he turned his mind toward loving affairs. To fulfill his purposes, he employed his internal potency." As we begin the famous narration of Lord Krishna's Rasa dance, a dance of love with beautiful young girls, questions will inevitably arise in the minds of ordinary people regarding the propriety of God's romantic dancing with many young girls in the middle of a full moon autumn night. In his description of the Lord's Rasa dance in Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Srila Prabhupada painstakingly explains the spiritual purity of these transcendental activities. Those advanced in the science of Krishna, great teachers or acharyas, leave no doubt that Lord Krishna is full and satisfied in himself, free of all material desire, which is, after all, a sense of incompleteness or lack. Materialistic persons and impersonal philosophers stubbornly reject the bona fide explanation of Sri Krishna's transcendental nature. There is no reason to deny the beautiful reality of an absolute person, able to perform absolute romantic activities, of which our so-called romance is merely a shadow or perverted reflection. The irrational insistence that material activities cannot be a reflection of the perfect spiritual activities performed by God reflects the unimaginative emotional disposition of those who oppose the reality of Sri Krishna. This psychological disposition of the non-devotees, which leads them to fervently deny the very existence of the absolute person, unfortunately boils down to what may be succinctly described as envy. Since the overwhelming majority of impersonal critics eagerly pursue their own romantic affairs, which they consider quite real and even quote-unquote spiritual, the actual supreme lover is Lord Krishna. The Vedanta Sutra begins by declaring that the absolute truth is the source of everything, and even Western philosophy was born in a somewhat awkward attempt at finding the original one behind the apparent many of material existence. Conjugal love, one of the most intense and demanding aspects of human existence, can hardly have nothing at all to do with supreme reality. In fact, the conjugal love experienced by human beings is a mere reflection of spiritual reality, in which the same love exists in an absolute pristine state. Thus, it is clearly stated here that when Krishna decided to enjoy the romantic atmosphere of autumn, he resorted to his spiritual potency. Yogamayam Upashrita, the spiritual nature of Lord Krishna's conjugal affairs, is a major theme of this section of the Srimad Bhagavatam. A woman is attractive because of the sweet sound of her voice, her beauty and gentleness, her enchanting fragrance and tenderness, and also because of her cleverness and skill in music and dance. The most attractive ladies of all are the young gopis of Vrindavan, who are Lord Krishna's internal potency. This chapter tells how he enjoyed their brilliant feminine qualities, even though, as Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has mentioned, Lord Krishna was an 8-year-old boy when these events took place. Ordinary people prefer God simply to be a witness of their romantic affairs. When a boy desires a girl or a girl desires a boy, sometimes they pray to God for their enjoyment. Such people are shocked and dismayed to find out that the Lord can enjoy his own loving affairs with his own transcendental senses. In truth, Sri Krishna is the original Cupid, and his exciting conjugal pastimes will describe in this section the Srimad Bhagavatam. When Lord Krishna descends to the earth, his spiritual body seems to take birth and grow as he displays his variegated pastimes. The Lord could hardly allow his boyhood to pass without exhibiting the supreme loving affairs between a young boy and young girls. Thus, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur quotes Srila Rupa Goswami as follows: Kaishoram safali karoti kalyana kunje viharam hari. Lord Krishna perfects his youth by arranging loving pastimes in the groves of the Vrindavan forest. Tadodu raja kakubha karair mukham paracha vilipan arunena shantamay charshaninam udagachacho mrijan priya priyaya iva dirgha darshana. The moon then rose, anointing the face of the western horizon with the reddish hue of the comforting rays, thus dispelling the pain of all who watched him rise. The moon was like a beloved husband who returns after a long absence and adorns the face of his beloved wife with red kumkum. Young Krishna engaged in his internal potency, and she immediately created an exciting atmosphere for conjugal love. Drishtva kumudvantam akhanda mandalam ramana nabham navakunkumarunam vanam chatat komalago bhiranjitam jagau kalam vamadrisham manoharam. Lord Krishna saw the unbroken disk of the full moon glowing with the red effulgence of a newly applied vermilion, as if it were the face of the goddess of fortune. He also saw the Kumuda lotuses opening in response to the moon's presence, and the forest gently illumined by its rays. Thus the Lord began to play sweetly on his flute, attracting the minds of the beautiful-eyed gopis. The word jagao in this verse indicates that Lord Krishna played songs on his flute, as confirmed in text 40 by the word kastre anga te kalapadayata venugita. The word Rama may the word Rama may indicate not only Lord Vishnu's consort but also Srimati Radharani, the original goddess of fortune. Lord Krishna appeared in the dynasty of the moon god, and the moon plays a prominent role here in preparing for the Lord's entrance into the midst of the rasa dance. Nishamya Geetam Tarang Ananga Vardhanam Vrajastriya Krishna Grihita Manasa Ajagmur Anyonyam Alkshito Dyamaha Sayatra Canto Javalola Kundala. When the young women of Vrindavan heard Krishna's flute song, which arouses romantic feelings, their minds were captivated by the Lord. They went to where their lover waited, each unknown to the other, moving so quickly that their earrings swung back and forth. Apparently, each gopi went secretly, hoping to avoid advertising to her rivals the fact that young Krishna was in the mood for romantic affairs. Sri Vishnu Chakra Thakur poetically describes the situation as follows. Krishna instigated a terrible act of thievery in Vrindavan when he played on his flute. The song of his flute entered through the ears of the gopis into the inner treasure chamber of their hearts. That wonderful music stole all the most valuable possessions, their sobriety, shyness, fear, and discrimination, along with their very minds. And in a split second, this music delivered all these goods to Krishna. Now each gopi went to beg to the Lord to return her personal property. Each beautiful young girl was thinking, I have to capture that great thief. And thus they went forward, each unknown to the others. Duhyantyo biyayu kaschid doham hitva samutsukha payodrish dishritya samyavam anudva syaparayayu. Some of the gopis were milking cows. When they heard Krishna's flute, they stopped milking and went off to meet him. Some left milk curdling on the stove, and others left cakes burning in the oven. The eagerness of the cowherd girls was so lovingly devoted to young Krishna as shown here. Pariveshayantyastadhitva payayantya shishunpaya shushushantyan patin kaschid ashnantyo pasya bhojanam limpantya pramrjantyonya anjantya kascha lochane vyatyasta vastra bharana kaschid krishnan tikamyayu. Some of them were getting dressed, feeding milk to their infants, or rendering personal service to their husbands. But they all gave up these duties and went to meet Krishna. Other gopis were taking their evening meals, washing themselves, putting on cosmetics, or applying kajal to their eyes. But all the gopis stopped these activities at once, though their clothes and ornaments were in complete disarray, rushed off to Krishna. Tavaryamana patibhi pitribhir bhatir bandhubhi Govinda pahritatmano nanya vartanata mohita. Their husbands, fathers, brothers, and other relatives tried to stop them, but Krishna had already stolen their hearts. Enchanted by the sound of his flute, they refused to turn back. Some of the young gopis were married. Their husbands tried to stop them. The unmarried girls had to deal with their fathers and brothers and other relatives. None of these relatives would have allowed even the young girls' dead bodies to go alone into the forest at night. But Lord Krishna had already engaged his internal potency. Thus the entire romantic episode unfolded without interference. Antargrihagata kaschid gopyo labda vinirgama Krishnam tad bhavana yukta dadhyur milita lochana. Some of the gopis, however, could not manage to get out of their houses, and instead they remained home with eyes closed, meditating upon him in pure love. Throughout the 10th canto, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives elaborate poetic commentaries on Lord Krishna's pastimes. It is not always possible to include these extensive descriptions, but we will quote it in its entirety. His comments on this verse. It is our sincere recommendation to learned Vaishnava community that a qualified devotee of Lord present the entire commentary of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the 10th canto, as a separate book, which will undoubtedly be appreciated by devotees and non-devotees alike. The Acharya's comments on this verse are as follows. In this context, we will make our analysis according to the method described in Srila Rupa Goswami's Ujjwala Nilamani. There are two categories of gopis, the eternally perfect, the Nitya Siddhas, and those who have become perfect by practicing Bhakti Yoga, the Sadhana Siddhas. The Sadhana Siddhas are of two categories, those who belong to special groups and those who do not. And there are also two classes of the gopis belong to the special groups, namely the Shruticharis, who come from the group of the personified Vedas, the Rishicharis, who come from the group of sages who saw Lord Ramchandra in the Dandakaranya forest. This same fourfold categorization of the gopis is given in the Padma Purana. Gopyastu Shrutayo Jnaya, Rishikja Gopa Kanyaka, Deva Kanyasya Rajendra, Na Manushya Kathanchana. It is understood that some of the gopis are personified Vedic literatures, while others are reborn sages, daughters of cowherds, or demigod maidens. But by no means, my dear king, are any of them ordinary human beings. Here we are informed that although the gopis appear to be human cowherd girls, they actually were not. Thus, the contention that they are mortals is refuted. The daughters of cowherds, referred to here as Gopa Kanyas, must be eternally perfect, since we never hear of them having executed any sadhana. Their apparent sadhana of worshipping goddess Katyayani, the role of gopis, merely manifests their manner of playing like human beings. The Bhagavatam narrates the account of the worship only to show how they had fully taken on the role of cowherd girls. That the Gopa Kanya gopis are actually Nitya Siddhas, eternally perfect devotees of the Lord, is established by a statement in Brahma Samhita, Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavitabhi, which proves that they are the Lord's spiritual pleasure potency. Similarly, we have the words of the Gautamiya Tantra, Ladini Ya Mahashakti. Further collaboration of their eternal perfection is that these gopis, being co-eternal with Lord Krishna, their lover, are mentioned along with him in the 18-syllable mantra, the 10-syllable mantra, and other. And also that the worship of these mantras and also the Shrutis that present them have been in existence since beginningless time. The Devakanyas, daughters of the demigods, who are mentioned in this verse, beginning Sambhavas Tvamara Stviya, explaining in Sri Ujjwala Nilamani as partial expansions of the gopis who are eternally perfect. That the Shrutichari gopis, the personified Vedas, are sadhana siddha is understood from the following words of theirs quoted in the Brihad Vamana Purana. Kandarpa koti lavanye tvai drishti manam sina kamini bhavam asadya smarakshubdhana samshaya yathav tval loka vasinya kama tatvena gopika bhajanti ramanam matva chikirshajanininas tatha. Since we have seen your face, which possesses the beauty of millions of cupids, our minds have become lusty after you, like those of the young girls, and we have forgotten all other allurements. We have developed the desire to act towards you as do the gopis who dwell on your transcendental planet and who manifest the nature of Cupid by worshipping you with the idea that you are their paramour. The Rishi Chari gopis are also sadhana siddhas, as stated in the Ujjwala Nilamani. Gopalopasaka purvam aprapta bhishta siddhaya. Previously, they were all Maharishis living in the Dandaka forest. We find evidence for this in the Padma Purana Uttarakhanda. Dashya Ramam Harim Tatra Bhoktim Aichan Suvigraham. Te sarvestritvam apanna samudbhutascha gokule harim samprapya kamena tato mukta bhavarnavat vat. This verse says that upon seeing Lord Ramchandra, the sages in the Dandaka forest desired to enjoy Lord Hari Krishna. In other words, their sight of Lord Rama's beauty reminded them of Lord Hari, Gopala, their personal object of worship, and then they wanted to enjoy with him. But out of embarrassment, they did not act on that desire, whereupon Lord Sri Ram, who is like a desire tree, gave his mercy to them, even though they had not voiced their request. Thus their desire was fulfilled, as stated in the words beginning, Te Sarve. By means of their lusty attraction, they became freed from the ocean of material existence, the cycle of birth and death, and coincidentally, they got the association of Hari in conjugal love. In the present verse of the Bhagavatam, we understand that it was the gopis who had children who were kept forcibly at home. This fact is clear from verses yet to come. Matara Pitara Putra Yat Patya Apatya Suhridam Anuvrittiranga and Pati Sutanvaya Bhratre Bandhavan. In his comments on the 10th canto, Srila Kavi Kavanapur Goswami mentions this fact. Without trying to repeat all his thoughts on this verse, we will give the gist of his purport. Upon seeing the personal form of Lord Sri Ramchandra, the sages who were worshippers of Lord Gopala immediately became elevated to the mature platform of spontaneous devotion, automatically reaching the stages of firm faith, attraction, and attachment. But they had not yet completely freed themselves of all material contamination. Therefore, Sri Yogamaya Devi arranged for them to take birth from the wombs of gopis and become cowherd girls by associating with the eternally perfect gopis. Some of these new gopis fully manifested purvarag, loving attraction for Krishna as soon as they reach puberty. This kind of attraction develops even before one meets the beloved. When these new gopis got the direct audience of Krishna and physically associated with him, all their remaining contamination became burned up and they achieved the advanced stages of prema, sneha, and sohan. Even so, they were in the company of their cowherd husbands. By the power of Yogamaya, the gopis remained unsullied by sexual contact with them. Rather, they were situated in purely spiritual bodies that Krishna enjoyed. On the night they heard the sound of Krishna's flute, their husbands tried to stop them, but by the merciful assistance of Yogamaya, the sadhana siddha gopis were able to go forth to their beloved together with the nitya siddha gopis. Other gopis, however, because of not getting the good fortune of associating with the nitya siddha gopis and other advanced gopis, had not achieved the stage of prema, and so their contamination was not completely burnt away. They entered the company of their cowherd husbands, and after sexual union with them, gave birth to children. But a short time later, even these gopis developed their purvarag by hankering intensely for the physical association of Krishna, a hankering they acquired by associating with the advanced gopis. Becoming worthy recipients of the mercy of the perfected gopis, they assumed transcendental bodies fit to be enjoyed by Krishna, and when Yogamaya failed to help them overcome their husband's attempt to keep them from going out, they felt themselves cast into the worst calamity. Viewing their husbands, brothers, fathers, and other family members as enemies, they came close to dying. Just as other women might remember their mothers and other relatives at the time of death, these gopis remembered the sole friend of their very life, Krishna, as stated in the previous verse of the Bhagavatam beginning with the word antar. It is implied that those ladies were not able to exit because they were held back by their husbands, who were standing before them with sticks in their hands, scolding them. Although the gopis were perpetually absorbed in love for Krishna, at that particular time they meditated upon him and cried out within, "Alas, alas, O only friend of our life, our ocean of the artistic skills of Vrindavan forest, please let us become your girlfriends in some future life. Because at this time we cannot see your lotus-like face with our eyes. So be it, we shall look upon you with our minds." Each of them lamenting to herself in this way, the gopis stood with their eyes shut and meditating deeply upon him. Dhusa presta viraha tivra tapa dhuta shubha dhyana prapta Chittashlesa Nivritya Kshinamangala Tameva Paramatmanam Jarabhudyapi Sangata Jahurgunamayam Deham Sadya Pratikshina Bandhana. For those gopis who could not go to see Krishna, intolerable separation from their beloved caused an intense agony that burned away all impious karma. By meditating upon him, they realized his embrace, and the ecstasy they then felt exhausted their material piety. Although Lord Krishna is the Supreme Soul, these girls simply thought of him as their male lover and associated with him in that intimate mood. Thus, their karmic bondage was nullified and they abandoned their gross material bodies. Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments upon this verse as follows. Here Shukadev Goswami speaks in a peculiar way. He presents the intimate object the gopis attained as if it were an external idea, thus keeping its true nature secret from outsiders, while at the same time he reveals to the confidential devotees, well versed in the scientific conclusions of devotional service, the internal meaning that is his real purport. Thus, to outsiders, Shukadev says that Krishna gave the gopis liberation. But the confidential here, Shukadev reveals that when the gopis experienced separation from their beloved, there arose in them both immeasurable unhappiness and immeasurable happiness, and that they gradually achieved their desired goal. Thus, the verse can be understood as follows. Because of their intolerable separation from their beloved, the gopis felt terrible agony, by which they caused all inauspicious things to tremble. In other words, when people in general hear of the gopis' extreme agony and separation from their beloved, they abandon thousands of inauspicious things. Things even as fearsome as the subterranean fires of millions of universes or the powerful poison swallowed by Lord Shiva. More specifically, those who hear of the gopis' love and separation give up their terrible false ego and thinking themselves defeated are shaken. When the gopis meditated on Lord Achyuta, he became manifest and personally came to them, and they experienced great joy by embracing his body, which was full of transcendental love for them. The gopis also experienced great joy by exhibiting personal characteristics and a sense of identification appropriate to such love. That joy made all their good fortune, both material and spiritual, seem paltry by comparison. The implication is that when other persons see how happy the gopis became upon embracing Krishna and when he manifested himself directly before them, these other persons feel that thousands of so-called auspicious objects are insignificant by comparison, including all the sense gratificatory pleasures found in millions of universes and even the supersensory pleasure of spiritual bliss, Brahmananda. Thus, hearing of the gopis' distress and the joy that arose respectively out of their separation from the Supreme Lord and their union with him, anyone can get rid of all the actions of his past activities, both sinful and pious. Vaishnavas certainly do not think that the sinful and pious reactions can be destroyed by being lived out. After all, neither separation from the Supreme Lord nor direct association with him are in the category of karma. This kind of elimination of karmic reaction occurs in the stage of bhajana for those who have come to the level of anartha nivritti. And thus the gopis thought of Krishna, the Paramatma, or the supreme worthy object of all love as their parama, or even though such a concept is ordinarily contemptible, the gopis realized Krishna is an even fuller sense than Rukmini and his other queens, who thought of him most respectfully as their husband. That thinking of the Lord as one's paramour is superior to thinking of him as one's husband is proved by the fact that unbridled pure love is superior to the domesticated love. This idea is born out of the following words of Sri Uddhava: Yadustyajam swajanam arya patham chahitva. These ladies of Braj abandoned their families and their being advanced religious principles, even though to do so is very difficult. In his pastimes on earth, Krishna often turns the most lowly things into the most elevated. As Bhishma stated, Krishna's pastime of acting as Arjuna's chariot driver was even more elevated than the pastimes in which he acted as mighty king of kings. Vijayaratha kutumba at totre drita hayarasmin tat trishyesh. I concentrate upon the chariot driver of Arjuna who stood with a whip in his hand, a right hand, and a bridle rope in his left, and who was very careful to protect Arjuna's chariot by all means. Similarly, in the Lord's appearance as Krishna, we see that the normally inferior conjugal ras becomes better than the normally superior mood of Shanta ras, as also the attitude of loving a paramour becomes superior to the loving exchange between legitimate spouses, and lowly gunja necklaces, red oxide paste, and peacock feathers become better than the most excellent jeweled ornaments. But it may be objected it is not fitting for the Supreme Lord to sport with women whose bodies have already been enjoyed by other men. This objection is replied to by the words beginning Jahu. The words Deham is used here in the singular form to indicate unity of character, of category. Even though the gopis are many, some authorities say that by the power of Yogamaya, these gopis' bodies disappeared in a way no one noticed. But other authorities say that the body referred to in this context is the inferior body composed of the modes of material nature. But thus, by the prominence of the adjective gunamayam, it is understood that before the gopis heard the sound of Krishna's flute, their bodies had been twofold, material and spiritual. And upon hearing the flute, they gave up the material bodies which their husbands had enjoyed. We may analyze this as follows. When devotees begin prosecuting devotional service in accordance with the instructions of a bona fide spiritual master, they engage their ears and other senses in pure devotion by hearing the Lord, chanting His glories, remembering Him, offering obeisances to Him, giving Him personal attendance, and so forth. Thus, the devotees make the Lord's transcendental qualities the objects of their senses, as stated by the Lord Himself. Nirguno mad apashraya. In this way, the devotees' bodies transcend the material modes. Yet sometimes the devotees may take as their sense objects mundane sounds, and so on, and that is material. Thus, the devotee's body can have two aspects, transcendental and material. According to one's level of devotional service, to that degree, the transcendental aspect of one's body becomes prominent, and the material aspect diminished. This transformation is described in the following verse in the Bhagavatam. Bhakti pareshanubhavo viraktir anyatra chaishatrika ekakala prapadyamanasya yathashnatasus tushti pushti kshudapayo nughasam. Devotion, direct experience of the Supreme Lord, and detachment from other things. These three occur simultaneously for one who has taken shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the same way, that pleasure, nourishment, and relief from hunger comes simultaneously and increasingly with each bite for a person engaged in eating. When one achieves totally pure love of God, the material portions of the body disappear, and the body becomes completely spiritual. Nonetheless, so as not to disturb the false opinions of atheists and so as to protect the confidentiality of devotional service, the Supreme Lord usually has His illusory energy exhibit the demise of the gross body. An example of this is the disappearance of the Yadavas during the Maushala Leela. Sometimes, however, to proclaim the excellence of Bhakti Yoga, Krishna will allow a devotee to go back to Godhead in the self-same body. As is the case of Dhruva Maharaj, we can cite evidence to this point from the 25th chapter of the 11th canto, text 32. Yene me nirjita saumya guna jivena chittaja bhakti yogena mannishto madbhavayas yaprapadyate. A living entity who conquers the modes of material nature which are manifest from the mind can dedicate himself to me, Krishna, by the process of devotional service and thus attain pure love for me. Here the Lord states that the defeat of destruction and destruction of that which is composed of the modes of material nature can be brought about only by the process of devotional service. Therefore, what we should understand from the present verse of the Bhagavatam is that the gopis who could not go see Krishna had their inauspicious material bodies removed or burnt up, while their auspicious spiritual bodies, far from being destroyed, simply grew more prominent because of the ecstasy of the gopis felt by embracing Krishna in meditation. Thus, their bondage was completely destroyed. By the help of Yogamaya, they got free from ignorance and also from the prohibitions of their husbands and other relatives. We should not make the mistake of explaining this falling away of the gopis' body as being a result of their dying. As Lord Himself states, Yamaya kridata ratyam vanesmin vrajar astita alabdha rasa kalyano mapur mad virya chintaya. Some of those all auspicious gopis could not directly join me enjoying the rasa dance on that night in this Vrindavan forest. Yet still they achieved my association by remembering my transcendental pastimes. By using the word kalyana in this verse, the Lord implies even though these gopis wanted to give up their bodies because of their husbands' prohibitions and the torment of separation from me, for them to die at the very beginning of the most auspicious festival of the Rasa dance would have been displeasing to me and thus inauspicious, so they did not die. More evidence that the gopis who were prevented from going to see Krishna did not physically die is provided by a statement of Sri Shukadeva's later in this canto. Ta uchur udvam pritastat sandeshagata smritihi. Then they, the gopis, replied to Uddhava, feeling satisfied because his message had reminded them of Krishna. Here, we understand that the gopis speaking to Uddhava were the ones who had not had the chance to participate directly in the rasa dance because of being held captive in their homes. Thus, the conclusion is that they gave up their material bodies without dying. Parched by the intense heat of separation, their material bodies gave up their materiality and became purely spiritual, just like the bodies of such great devotees as Dhruva Maharaj. This is the meaning of the gopis giving up their bodies. The following analogy illustrates that statuses in the various gopis by observing 7 or 8 ripe mangoes on a tree. We can ascertain that all the fruits of the tree are ripe. Then we pick them all and bring them home, where in due course the sun's rays and other agents will make them fine-looking, fragrant and delicious, fit to be offered to the king for his enjoyment. When the time comes for the king to take his meal, a discriminating servant can choose those fruits ready to offer him. For the appearance of the fruits, the servant can tell which are ripe in the middle, but still raw on the outside, and thus not yet fit for the king. By the application of a special heating process, these remaining fruits will become ripe in 2 or 3 days, and then they too will be ready to offer to the king. Similarly, among the Munichari gopis who took birth in Gokula, those who completely gave up the materiality of their bodies and very early in their lives achieved pure spiritual bodies were able to remain untouched by another man. Thus Yogamaya allowed them to join the Nityasiddha and other advanced gopis, and when they went to meet Krishna, other Munichari gopis still retained some connection with the external material body, but even they, after being parched by the heat and separation from Sri Krishna, gave up their materiality of their bodies and assumed perfectly transcendental bodies, purified of all taint of contact with other men. On the night of the Rasa dance, Yogamaya sent some of these gopis out behind those who had already gone out. Others who Yogamaya saw still had a slight amount of contamination. She kept back to further purify with the heat of separation, and then she sent them out on some other night. After enjoying the pleasures of the Rasa dance and other pastimes with Krishna, the Munichari gopis who had participated went back to their homes when the night was over, as did the Nityasiddha and other advanced gopis. But now Yogamaya protected these Munichari gopis from the material association of their husbands. In other words, these gopis were devoid of any selfish attachment for husband, children, and so on. Since these gopis were thoroughly immersed in that great ocean of love for Krishna, their breasts dried up so that they could not feed their infants, and to their family members they appeared as if haunted by ghosts. In conclusion, it is not unseemly that the gopis who were previous in material association joined in the Rasa dance. Some authorities, however, maintain that the gopis who were kept back in their houses did not have children. According to them, whenever such words as apatya, children, are used in verses yet to come, these words refer to the children of co-wives to adopt children or to nephews and nieces. Shri Parikshit Uvacha Krishnam Viduparam Kantam Natu Brahmattaya Mune Gunapravaho Paramas Tasam Gunadhiyam Katham. Shri Parikshit Maharaj said, O sage, the gopis knew Krishna only as their lover, not as the supreme absolute truth. So how could these girls, their minds caught up in the waves of modes of nature, free themselves from material attachment? King Parikshit was sitting in an assembly of great sages and other important personalities. King Parikshit was sitting in an assembly of great sages and other important personalities. Listening to the words of Shukadeva Goswami, according to Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, as Shukadeva Goswami began speaking of the gopis' conjugal love for Krishna, the king noticed the expressions on the faces of some of the more materialistic persons present there, and realized the doubt lurking in their hearts. Therefore, although the king thoroughly knew the purport of Shukadeva's words, he presented himself as experiencing personal doubts so that he could eradicate the doubts of others. That is why he asked this question. Shri Shukha Vacha Uktam Purastad Etatte Chaidya Siddhim Yatha Katha Dashanapi Rishi Kesham Kim Udat Dokshaja Priya. Shukadeva Goswami said, this point was explained to you previously. Since even Shishupal who hated Krishna achieved perfection, then what to speak of the Lord's dear devotees? Although the spiritual nature of conditioned souls may be covered by illusion, Lord Krishna's spiritual nature is omnipotent and is never covered by any other power. In fact, all other powers are his energy and thus function according to his will. The Brahma Samhita states, Srishti Sthiti Pralaya Sadhana Shakti Reva Chayeva Yasya Bhuvanani Vivarti Durga Ichhanu Rupam Api Yasya Chatesha. The mighty Durga, who creates and maintains and annihilates the material worlds, is the potency of the Supreme Lord, and she moves like his shadow, according to his desire. Thus, because the Lord's spiritual influence does not depend on whether someone understands him or not, the gopis' spontaneous love for Krishna guaranteed their spiritual perfection. The great Madhvacharya quotes the following relevant passages from the Skanda Purana. Krishna kamastada gopyas tyaktva deham divam gatha samyak krishnam para brahma gyatva kalat param yayu. At that time, the gopis who desired Krishna gave up their bodies and went to the spiritual world. Because they properly understood Krishna to be the supreme absolute truth, they had transcended the influence of time. Purvam cha jnana samyuktas tatrapi prayashas tatha atastasam para brahma Gatirasinna kamata. In their previous lives, most of the gopis were already fully endowed with transcendental knowledge. It is because of this knowledge, not their lust, that they were able to attain the Supreme Brahman. Natu jnanam vrite moksho nanya pante hishruti kama yukta tada bhakti jnanam chato vimuktiga. The Vedas declare that without spiritual knowledge, there is no valid path to liberation, because these apparently lusty gopis possess devotion and knowledge, they achieve liberation. Ato mokshe pitasam cha kama bhaktyanu vartate mukti shabdodito chaidya prabhrato dvesha bhagina. Thus, even in their attachment of liberation, lust followed as a manifestation of their pure devotion. After all, what we call liberation was experienced even by envious persons like Shishupal. Bhakti margi prathan muktim agad vishnu paras prasadata kamastva subhya krichapi bhaktya vishnu prasadakrit. By the mercy of Lord Vishnu, one who follows the path of devotional service gains liberation as a byproduct, and such a person's lusty desire, which would normally invoke misfortune, instead invokes the mercy of Lord Vishnu and exhibited in pure devotion. Dveshi jiva yutam chapi bhaktam Vishnur vimochayet ahoti karuna Vishnu shishupalasya mokshanat. Lord Vishnu will save even a devotee possessed of an envious life. Just see the extreme mercy of the Lord as shown by his granting liberation to Shishupal. Shishupal was Lord Krishna's son. He was mortified when the Lord stole the gorgeous young Rupini, whom Shishupal himself was hell-bent on marrying. For various other reasons, also Shishupal was consumed by the envy of Lord Krishna. And finally, he insanely offended him in a great assembly called the Rajasuya sacrifice. At that time, Krishna nonchalantly cut off Shishupal's head and gave him liberation. Everyone present saw the effulgent soul of Shishupal rise out of his dead body and merge into the existence of the Lord. The seventh canto explains that Shishupal was an incarnation of the gatekeeper in the spiritual world, cursed to take birth on the earth as a demon. Since even Shishupal was liberated by the Lord, who took into consideration the whole situation, and then what to speak of the gopis who loved Krishna more than anything. Nirnam nishreya sarthaya vyaktir bhagavato nrpa avyayasya parameyasya nirgunasya gunatmana. O King, the Supreme Lord is inexhaustible and immeasurable, and He is untouched by the material modes because He is their controller. His personal appearance in this world is meant for bestowing the highest benefit on humanity. Since Lord Krishna descends to benefit mankind in general, why would He neglect innocent young girls who loved Him more than anyone else did? Although the Lord awards Himself to His pure devotees, He is avyaya, inexhaustible, because He is aprameya, immeasurable. He is also nirguna, free of material qualities. Thus, those who intimately associate with Him are on the same platform. He is Gunatma, the controller or original personality behind the modes of nature. And it is specifically for this reason that He is free of them. In other words, because the modes of nature are His energy, they cannot act upon Him. Kamam krodam bhayam sneham aikyam sauhridam evacha nityam hara vidadhatu yanti tanmayatam hite. Persons who constantly direct their lust, anger, fear, protective affection, feeling of impersonal oneness, or friendship toward Lord Hari are sure to become absorbed in thought of Him. Lord Krishna is pure spiritual existence, and those who somehow or other become attached to Him, absorbed in thoughts of Him, rise to the spiritual platform. This is the absolute nature of the Lord's personal association. With this verse, Shukadeva Goswami answered King Parikshit's question about the gopis. After all, Shukadeva has begun to narrate Krishna's most intimate pastimes, the Rasa Dance, and Parikshit is cooperating to remove the doubts of others who are hearing or who in the future may hear this astonishing story. Sri Madhvacharya has quoted a statement from the Skanda Purana that emphatically declares persons like the gopis to be liberated souls beyond the pale of material illusion. Bhaktyahi nitya kamitvam natu muktim vina bhavet adakamitaya vapi muktir bhakti matam haro. Eternal conjugal attraction to Krishna expressed in pure devotional service cannot develop in one who is not already liberated. Thus, those who are devoted to Lord Hari, even in conjugal attraction, are already liberated. Sri Madhvacharya then quotes from the Padma Purana to clarify the essential point that one cannot be liberated simply by lusting after Lord Krishna, but rather only by possessing conjugal attraction in pure devotional service. Sneha Bhakta Sada Deva Kam Mitvena Napsarashriya Kashchit Kaschinna Kamena Bhaktya Kevalayayvatu. The demigods are always affectionately devoted to the Lord, and the young ladies of heaven called Apsaras have lusty feelings towards Him. Although some of them have pure devotion for Him, untainted by material lust, only these latter Apsaras are ready for liberation, because without bona fide devotional service, one cannot possibly achieve liberation. Thus, devotional service is not yogyam, or appropriate, unless free from material lust. One should not take cheaply the gopis' achievement of personal association with Lord Krishna in a conjugal relationship. To show the gravity of direct relationship with the Lord, Srila Madhvacharya has quoted the following verse from the Varaha Purana. Padatvena shriyo pasyo brahmana me piteti cha pitamahatyayan yesham tridashanam janardanaha. The goddess Lakshmi worships Lord Janardana as her husband, Lord Brahma worships him as his father, and the other demigods worship him as their grandfather. Prapitamaho me Bhagavan Ti sarva janasyatu Guru Shri Brahmano Vishnu Suranam Cha Guru. Thus people in general should think the Supreme Lord is my great-grandfather. Lord Vishnu is the spiritual master of Brahma and thus the Guru of the demigods. Guru Brahmasya Jagato Daivam Vishnu Sanatanaha Ityevopasanam Karyam Nanyatatu Kathanchana. Brahma is the spiritual master of the universe, and Vishnu is the eternally worshipable deity. With this understanding, and not otherwise, one should worship the Lord. Above injunctions apply to Sarvajnana, all people in general. Thus, one should follow these injunctions until one achieves the exalted platform of intimate relationship with the Supreme Lord. There is abundant evidence that the gopis of Vrindavan were highly elevated, liberated souls. Thus, their pastimes with Krishna are pure spiritual affairs. Keeping this in mind, we can truly understand this chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Nachaivam vishmaya karyo bhavata bhagavatyaje yogeshwareshware krishne yata etad vimuchyate. You should not be so astonished by Krishna, the unborn master of mystic power, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. After all, it is the Lord who liberates this world. Parikshit Maharaj should not have been so astonished that the Lord Krishna's so-called romantic affairs are in fact meant to liberate the entire universe. After all, that is the Lord's purpose, to bring all conditioned soul back home, back to Godhead, for an eternal life of bliss and knowledge. The Lord's conjugal affairs with the gopis is fit in very nicely with that program, because we who are actually lusty in material consciousness can be purified and liberated by hearing of them. In the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Narad Muni states, Amayo yascha bhutanam jayate yena shuvrata tadeva hyamayam dravyam na punati chikitshitam. O good soul, does not a thing applied therapeutically cure a disease that was caused by that very same thing? Thus, Krishna's romantic affairs, being pure spiritual activities, will cure those who hear about them of the disease of material lust. Tadrishtva tikam ayata bhagavan raja yoshita avadad vadatam shrestho vacha peshad vimohayan. Seeing that the girls of Vraja had arrived, Lord Krishna, the best of speakers, greeted them with charming words that bewildered their minds. Having established the spiritual nature of the gopis' love for Krishna, Shri Kadev Goswami proceeds with his narration. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Swagatam Vo Mahabhaga Priyam Kim Kara Vaniva Rajasyanam Mayam Kachid Bhruta Gamana Karanam. Lord Krishna said, O most fortunate ladies, welcome. What may I do to please you? Is everything well in Vraj? Please tell me the reason for your coming here. Lord Krishna knew perfectly well why the gopis had come. In fact, he had called them with the romantic melodies of his flute. So Krishna was simply teasing the gopis by asking them, why have you come here so quickly? Is something wrong in town? Why have you come here anyway? What do you want? The gopis were Krishna's young lovers, and therefore these questions certainly bewildered them, for they had responded to Krishna's call with simple mentality of enjoying conjugal love with him. Rajanyesha ghora rupa ghora sattva nishevita prati yata vrajam neha stheyam stribhir madhyama. This night is quite frightening, and frightening creatures are lurking about. Return to Vraj, slender-waisted girls. This is not a proper place for women. Sri Vishnu Thakur has written the following charming commentary on this verse. The gopis thought, alas, alas, even after shattering our family responsibilities, our sobriety and our shame and enjoying us day after day, and after now dragging us here by the sound of his flute, he is asking us why we have come? As the gopis cast sidelong glances at one another, the Lord said, if you try to tell me that you have come to get night-blooming flowers to use in the worship of God, and that it is these flowers you are looking with your sidelong glances, I have to reject your excuse as unacceptable. since neither the time, place, nor persons involved are appropriate. This is the Lord's meaning in this verse, Rajani. He might have said, even though there is abundant moonlight, this time of night is very fearsome because many snakes, scorpions, and other dangerous creatures too small for you to see are lying beneath the creepers, roots, and twigs. Therefore, this time is unsuitable for gathering flowers. And not only the time, but also this place is unsuitable for you to gather flowers, because at night terrible creatures such as tigers are abroad here. Therefore, you should go back to Braj. But, the gopis may object, let us just rest for a few minutes and then we will go. Then the Lord might reply, women shouldn't remain in this kind of place. In other words, because of the time and place, it is wrong for persons like yourselves to stay here even for a moment. Furthermore, by the word Sumadhyama, or slender-waisted ones, the Lord implied, you are beautiful young girls, and I am a beautiful young boy, because you are all very chaste, and I am a brahmachari, as confirmed by the words Krishna Brahmachari in the Shruti Gopalatapani Upanishad. There should be no fault in our being in the same place. Nonetheless, the mind can never be trusted, neither yours nor my own. The Lord's inner eagerness thus hinted at its obvious if we read his words between the lines as follows. If out of shyness you cannot tell me the reason you've come, then don't speak. I already know it anyway, so just listen as I tell it to you. Thus the Lord speaks the words beginning, Rajani. The following statement by Krishna is based on an alternative meaning of the verse derived when Sanskrit words are separated in different ways. The alternative separation, according to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, would be Rajani Esha Aghora Rupa Aghora Sattva Nishevita Pratiyata Vrajam Na Ihasteyam Stribhir Sumadhyama. Through Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti's commentary, Krishna explains the meaning of this division of words. The pervasive moonshine has made this night appear not at all fearsome, and therefore this forest is populated by harmless creatures such as deer, aghora sattva, or else by animals such as the tigers, that are harmless because Vrindavan's naturally non-violent atmosphere. Consequently, this night should not frighten you. Or else Krishna may have meant you should not be afraid of your own husbands and other relatives, because the night being populated by fearsome animals, they will not come near this place. Therefore, please do not go back to Vraj, na pratitaya, but stay here in my company, ihasteyam. The gopis may ask the Lord, how are you staying here? The Lord answers with women. But you are satisfied to keep just any woman in your company. The Lord replies to this with the word Sumadhyama, meaning only women who are young and beautiful, who have slender waists, namely yourselves, should stay here with me, not others. Thus we can appreciate Krishna's statements are full of considerate as well as neglectful sentiments. Krishna's words are certainly brilliant, because according to the rules of Sanskrit grammar, they may be understood in either two opposite ways. In the first case, as translated above, Lord Krishna continues to tease the gopis by telling them the night is dangerous and inauspicious and that they should go home. But Krishna is simultaneously saying the exact opposite, namely that there is absolutely no reason for the gopis to fear coming to the Lord, that the night is quite auspicious and that the girls should under no circumstances go back home. Thus Lord Krishna simultaneously teases and enchants the gopis with his words. Matara pitara putra bhratara patayaschava vichinvanti hyapashyanto makridvam banu sadvasam. Not finding you at home, your mothers, fathers, sons, brothers, and husbands are certainly searching for you. Don't cause anxiety for your family members. Drishtam manu kusumitam rakesha kara ranjita yamuna nila lilaijat tarupallava sobhitam tad yatamachiram goshtam shushushadvam patinsati randanti vatsabalascha tanpayayata duhyata. Now you have seen this Vrindavan forest full of flowers and resplendent with the light of the full moon. You have seen the beauty of the trees with their leaves trembling in gentle breeze coming from the Yamuna. So now go back to the coward village. Don't delay. O chaste ladies, serve your husbands and give milk to your crying babies and calves. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur further explains text 22 as follows. Lord Krishna says, therefore don't wait a long time before going, but go immediately. The word sati means that the gopis are loyal to their husbands. Therefore Krishna indicates that the gopis should serve their husbands so that latter can accomplish their religious duties. And the gopis should also be considered worshipable because of their chastity. All this Krishna says to the gopis who are married. And now, to the unmarried girls, he says, the calves are crying to see. The calves are crying to see. So see to it that they get milk. To the Munichari gopis, he says, your babies are crying, so feed them milk. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur further explains the hidden meaning of these two verses as follows. In text 21, Krishna might have said, this Vrindavan is the very best of places, and moreover, this is a full moon night. Furthermore, we have the Yamuna on all sides, and there are cool, gentle, fragrant breezes blowing. These all transcendental opulences that stimulate loving exchanges. And since I am also here as a former ecstatic opulence, the object of love, let us now test how much expertise you can show in relishing rasas. In text 22, he means to say, thus for a long time, for the entire duration of this night, don't leave, but rather stay here and enjoy with me. Don't go serve your husbands and the gentle women, your mothers-in-law, and so forth. It would not be fitting for you to waste such beauty and youth, which are gifts of the Creator. Nor should you milk the cows or give milk to the calves and babies. What do you, who are full of ecstatic attraction for me, have to do with these affairs? Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also explains that the gopis could not really be sure exactly what Krishna was doing, whether he was merely joking, inviting them to stay, or instructing them to return home. Thus, as Sri Krishna spoke about the beauty of the forest, the gopis felt embarrassed and bewildered and looked upward at the trees. As he spoke about the Yamuna, they looked all around at the river. The absolute purity and simplicity, along with their absolute devotion to Lord Krishna in their conjugal mood, created the most beautiful pastimes ever exhibited in this universe. Atava mad abhishnehad bhavatyo yantrita shaya agata hya upapannam va priyante mai jantava. On the other hand, perhaps you have come here out of your great love for me, which has taken control of your hearts. This is, of course, quite commendable on your part, since all living entities possess natural affection for me. Ratu shushru shanam strinam paro dharmo hyamayaya tad bandhunam cha kalyana prajanam chanuposhanam. The highest religious duty for a woman is to sincerely serve her husband, behave well toward her husband's family, and take good care of her children. Srila Jiva Goswami astutely points out that the gopis' real eternal husband is Lord Krishna, not their so-called husbands at home, who falsely consider the gopis their property. Thus, a strict interpretation of the words amayaya without illusion reveals that the supreme religious duty for the gopis is to serve Sri Krishna, their real lover. Dushila durbhago vriddho jado rogya dhano piva pati stribhir na hatavyo loke subhir apataki. Women who desire a good destination in their next life should never abandon a husband who has not fallen from his religious standards, even if he is obnoxious, fortunate, old, unintelligent, sickly, or poor. Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur quotes a similar statement from the Smriti Shastra, Patim tva apatitam bhajet. One should serve a master who is not fallen. Sometimes the foolish argument is given that even if a husband falls down from spiritual principles, his wife should continue to follow him since he is her quote-unquote guru. In fact, since Krishna consciousness cannot be subordinated to any other religious principle, a guru who engages his follower in materialistic sinful activities loses his status as a guru. Srila Prabhupada stated that the system of monarchy collapsed in Europe because the monarchs abused and exploited their position. Similarly, in the Western world, men have abused and exploited women, and now there is a popular movement in which women reject the authority of their husbands. Ideally, men should be staunch in spiritual life and give pure, sincere guidance to the women under their care. The gopis, of course, being on the highest platform of spiritual perfection, were transcendental to all positive and negative religious considerations. In other words, they were the eternal lovers of the absolute truth. Asvargyam ayasasyam cha phalgo kritram bhavyavaham jigupsitam cha sarvatra yau papatyam kula striya. For women from a respectable family, petty adulterous affairs are always condemned. They bar her from heaven, ruin her reputation, and bring her difficulty and fear. Shravanad darshanad dhyanan mahi bhavo nukirtanat natatha sannikarshena pratiyata tato grahan. Transcendental love for me arises by the devotional processes of hearing about me, seeing my deity form, meditating on me, and faithfully chanting my glories. The same result is not achieved by mere physical proximity. So please go back to your homes. Lord Krishna is certainly presenting formidable arguments. Sri Shukla Uvacha iti vipriyam akranya gopya govinda bhasitam vishanna bhagna sankalpas Chintamapururatyayam. Shukadeva Goswami said, hearing these unpleasant words spoken by Govinda, the gopis became morose. Their great hopes were frustrated, and they felt unsurmountable anxiety. The gopis did not know what to do. They considered falling at Krishna's feet and crying for his mercy, or perhaps remaining aloof and going back to their homes. But they could do neither of these things, and so felt great anxiety. Kritva mukhanye avasuchasva sanena susyad bimbad harani charanena bhuva likhantya asrair upatamasibhi kuchakum kamani kastur mrijantyura dukha barasmatushnim. Their heads hanging down and their heavy sorrowful breathing drying up their reddened lips, the gopis scratched the ground with their toes. Tears flowed from their eyes, carrying their cudgel and washing away their vermilion smeared on their breasts. Thus they stood silently, bearing the burden of their unhappiness. The gopis felt, if Krishna has not been conquered by love, then our love must not be genuine. And if we cannot properly love Krishna, what is the use of our lives? Their reddish lips were drying up because of their hot breathing that arose from their unhappiness. When the hot sun dries up, red bimba fruits, dark spots appear on them and they grow soft. The beautiful lips of the gopis similarly changed in appearance. They stood silently before Krishna, unable to speak. Preshtham priyetaram iva pratibhas samanam Krishnam tadartha vinivartita sarva kama Nete vimrijya rudito pahate sma kinchid samrabha gadgada giro bhruvatanyurakta. Although Krishna was their beloved, and although they had abandoned all other objects of desire for his sake, he had been speaking to them unfavorably. Nonetheless, they remained unflinching in their attachment to him. Stopping their crying, they wiped their eyes and began to speak, their voices stammering with agitation. The gopis now replied to Sri Krishna, their voices choking up with anger caused by their intense love for him and their unwillingness to give him up. They would not allow him to reject them. Shri Gopya Uchuhu Maivam Vibhorhati Bhavan Gaditum Risasam Santyajya Sarva Vishayam Stava Padamulam Bhakta Bhajasva Duravargraha Matya Jasman Devo Yathadi Purusha Bhajate Mumukshun. The beautiful gopis said, O powerful one, you should not speak in this cruel way. Do not reject us. who have renounced all material enjoyment to render devotional service to your lotus feet. Reciprocate with us, O stubborn one, just as this primeval Lord, Sri Narayan, reciprocates with his devotees in their endeavors for liberation. Yatpatya suhridam anuvrittiranga strinam swadharma iti dharma vidatvayoktam astvevametad pade tvaishe preshto bhavam tanubhritam kila bandhuratma. Dear Krishna, as an expert in religion, you have advised us that the proper religious duty for women is to faithfully serve their husbands, children, and other relatives. We agree that this principle is valid, but actually the service should be rendered to you. After all, O Lord, you are the dearmost friend of all embodied souls. You are their most intimate relative, and indeed their very self. Shri Krishna is the soul of all souls, the dearmost friend and well-wisher. And in the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam, Devarshi bhutapta nrinam pritrinam nakim karonayam rini rajan sarvatmanaya sharanam sharanyam gato mukundam parihritya kartam. O King, one who has given up all material duties and has taken full shelter of the lotus feet of Mukunda, who offers shelter to all, is not indebted to the demigods, great sages, ordinary living beings, relatives, friends, mankind, or even one's forefathers who have passed away, since all such classes of living entities are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. One who has surrendered to the Lord's service has no need to serve such persons separately. Authority descends from the author of all existence, the Supreme Lord. Natural figures of authority, such as husbands, mothers, government leaders, and sages, gain their power and authority from the spiritual Lord, and should thus represent the absolute truth to those who follow them. If one wholeheartedly engages in devotional and loving service to the original Supreme Truth, one need not indirectly serve the absolute truth through the above-mentioned secondary authorities. Even a soul surrendered to God, however, continues to serve the spiritual master, who is a direct, not an indirect representative of the Supreme Lord. A bona fide acharya, or spiritual master, is a transparent medium leading the disciple to the lotus feet of Krishna. All indirect authorities become obsolete when one is directly in touch with the absolute truth. The gopis wanted to explain this basic point to Krishna, and some of the bolder young girls among them attempted to defeat Sri Krishna with his own statements as exemplified in this verse. Kurvanti hi tvairatim kusala swa atman nitya priye pati sutadi bhirarti daihikim tanna prasida parameshwara masma chindya asam vitam tvai chirad aravinda netra. Expert transcendentalists always direct their affection toward you because they recognize you as their true self and eternal beloved. What use do we have for these husbands, children, and relatives of ours who simply give us trouble? Therefore, Supreme Controller, grant us your mercy, O Lotus-eyed One. Please do not cut down our long cherished hope to have your association. Chittam sukhena bhavatapahritam griheshu yan nirvishatyu savatyuta kharavapi grihya kritye padau padam na chalatastava padamulad yam makritham rajamatho karavama kimva. Until today our minds were absorbed in household affairs, but you easily stole both our minds and our hands away from our housework. Now our feet won't move one step from your lotus feet. How can we go back to Vraj? What will we do there? Sri Krishna had blown into his flute, and the intoxicating music had come out of its holes and stolen the minds of the young gopi girls. Now they had come to see Krishna to demand back their stolen property, but they could regain their minds only if Sri Krishna accepted them and engaged with them in conjugal affairs. Sri Krishna might have replied But, my dear gopis, just go home for now. Let me consider the situation for a day or two, and then I will give you back your minds. In reply to this possible argument, the gopis state, our feet refuse to move even one step. So please give us back our minds and accept us, and then we will go. सिञ्चाङ्गनस्त्वद् अधरामृतपूरकेण हासावलोककलगीतजहृच्छयाग्निं नो चेद्वयं विरह जाग्न्युपयुक्तदेह ध्यानेन यामपदयो पदवीं सखेते. Dear Krishna, please pour the nectar of your lips upon the fire within our hearts, a fire you ignited with your smiling glances and the sweet song your flute. And if you do not, we will consign our bodies to the fire of separation from you, O friend, and thus like yogis attain to the abode of your lotus feet by meditation. यार्ह्यम्बुजाक्ष तव पादतलं रमाया दत्तं क्षणं क्वचिदरण्यजनप्रियस्य अस्प्राक्ष्म तत्प्रभृति नान्यसमक्षमञ्ज स्थातुं त्वयाभिरमिता बत पारयामा. O lotus-eyed one, the goddess of fortune considers it a festive occasion whenever she touches the soles of your lotus feet. You are very dear to the residents of the forest, and therefore we will also touch those lotus feet. From that time on, we will be unable to stand in the presence of any other man, for we will have been fully satisfied by you. Shriyat padambujarajas chakame tulasya labdvapi vakshasi padam kilabhritya drishtam yasya swavikshana utanya sura prayasas tadvadvayam chapatava padaraja prapanna. Goddess Lakshmi, whose glance is sought after by the demigods with great endeavor, has achieved the unique position of always remaining at the chest of her Lord Narayan. Still, she desires the dust of his lotus feet. Even though she has to share that dust with Tulsi Devi and indeed with the Lord's many other servants, similarly, we have approached the dust of your lotus feet for shelter. The gopis here point out that the dust of the Lord's feet is so ecstatic and enlivening that the goddess of fortune wants to abandon her unique position on his chest to share with many other devotees a position at his feet. Thus the gopis urge Lord Krishna not to be guilty of a double standard. Since the Lord gave the goddess of fortune a place on his chest and allowed her to seek the dust of his lotus feet, Krishna should certainly give the same opportunity to his most loving devotees, the gopis. After all, the gopis pleaded, seeking the dust of your lotus feet is perfectly justified, and you should encourage us in this endeavor and not try to send us away. Tanna prasiddha vrijinardana tengri moolam prapta visrijya vasatistvad upasanasya Tvat sundara smita nirikshana tivra kama taptatmanam purusha bhushana dehi dasyam. Therefore, O vanquisher of all distress, please show us mercy to approach your lotus feet. We abandon our families and homes, and we have no desire other than to serve you. Our hearts are burning with intense desire, generated by your beautiful smiling glances, O jewel among men. Please make us your maidservants. When Sri Krishna was born, the sage Garga predicted that he would manifest all the opulences of the Supreme Lord Narayan. The gopis now appeal to the Lord to fulfill this prediction by being merciful and granting them direct service, just as Lord Narayan awards direct service to his loving devotees. The gopis emphasize that they did not give up their families and homes with the hope of securing a higher pleasure from Krishna. They are simply begging for service, revealing their pure-hearted devotion. Gopis think, if in the course of your pursuing your happiness we somehow or other become happy by seeing your face, what is the harm in that? Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments on the words Purusha Bhushana, or jewel among men. The Thakur states that the gopis meant to say, O jewel of all males, please decorate our golden bodies with the dark blue gems of your limbs. Vishyalakavritamukham tava kundala shri gandha sthaladhara sudham hasittavalokam dathabhayam cha bhujadande yugam vilokya vaksha sriyekaramanam cha bhavamadasya. Seeing your face encircled by curling locks of hair, your cheeks beautified by earrings, your lips full of nectar, and your smiling glance, and also seeing your two imposing arms which take away our fear, and your chest, which is the only source of pleasure for the goddess of fortune, we must become your maidservants. Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur envisions the gopis dealing with Krishna as follows. Krishna says, you want to become my servants? So do I have to buy you with some payment? Or are you giving yourselves freely? The gopis reply, since the beginning of our youthful womanhood, you have been purchasing us with a payment of millions and millions of times more than enough. That payment is your gem-like smiling glance, which constitutes a great treasure we have never heard about or seen anywhere else. When you put your golden turban on your head, your maidservants will act as your valet, pulling up the turban bit by bit until it is just the right position. And even while you shake a chastising finger at her, trying hard to prohibit her, she will put her hand beneath your turban and take the opportunity to glance at your face. Thus, we, your maidservants, will relish our eyes, your abundant sweetness. Krishna says, your husbands will not tolerate this behavior of ours. They will complain bitterly to King Kamsa, thus producing a fearful situation for me and you as well. The gopis say, but Krishna, your two mighty arms make us fearless, just as they did when you held up Govardhan Hill to protect us from the pride of Mahindra. Those arms will certainly kill the beast Kamsa. But being a religious person, I cannot make others' wives my maidservants. O dear crest jewel of religious personalities, you may say that you refuse to make the coward's wife your maidservant, but by force you have already taken Lakshmi, the wife of Narayan, from Vaikuntha, and are carrying her around on your chest. Out of shame, she has assumed the form of golden lion on your chest, and she takes her only pleasure there. Besides, within all the 14 worlds and even above these worlds in Vaikuntha beyond this universe, you never reject any beautiful woman, no matter who she is or whom she belongs to. We know this quite well. Kastreyangate kalapadayata venugita samohitarya charitan na chale trilokyam trailokya saubhagam idam na niriksha rupam yad godvijadrumam riga pulakanya bhibran. Dear Krishna, what women in all three worlds wouldn't deviate from religious behavior when bewildered by the sweet, drowning out melody of your flute? Your beauty makes all three worlds auspicious. Indeed, even the cows, birds, trees, and deer manifest the ecstatic symptoms of bodily hair standing on end when they see your beautiful form. Vyaktam bhavan rajabhayat yarti haro bhijato devo yathadi purusha suraloka gopta tanno nidehi kara pankaja marta bandho tapta saneshu chasi sirashu chaking kinkarinam. Clearly, you have taken birth into this world to relieve the fear and distress of the people of Raj, just as the Supreme Personality guided the primeval Lord protects the domain of the demigods. Therefore, a friend of the distressed, kindly place your lotus hand on your maidservant's head and burning breast. Shishukho vacha iti viklavitam tasam shrutva yogeshwareshwara rahasya sadayam gopir atmaramopyariramat. Shukadeva Goswami said, smiling upon hearing these despondent words from the gopis, Lord Krishna, the Supreme Master of all masters of mystic yoga, mercifully enjoyed with them, although he is self-satisfied. Tabi sametabhir udara chestita priye kshanot pullamukhi bhir achyuta udara hasa dvijakunda didhatir vyarochat tainanka ivodubhirvrata. Among the assembled gopis, the infallible Lord appeared just like the moon surrounded by stars. He whose activities are so magnanimous made their faces blossom with his affectionate glances, and his broad smiles revealed the effulgence of his jasmine bud-like teeth. The word achyuta here indicates that Lord Krishna did not fail to give pleasure to each and every gopi in the nocturnal assembly. Pagiyamana udgayan vanita shata utapa malam bhibrad vaijayantim vyacharan mandayan vanam. As the gopis sang his praises, that leader of hundreds of women sang loudly in reply. He moved among them wearing his Vaijayanti garland, beautifying the Vrindavan forest. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, Lord Krishna sang many wonderful melodies and meters, and the gopis accompanied him. Following his lead, Krishna singing in the occasion is described in the Sri Vishnu Purana. Krishna Sarachandra Masam Kaumudim Kumudakaram Jago Gopis Janas Tvekam Krishna Nama Puna Puna. Krishna sang the glories of the autumn moon, the moonshine, and the lotus-filled river, and the gopis simply sang his name repeatedly. Nadya Pulinam Avishya Gopi Bhirhima Valukam Justam Tat Taralanandi Kumuda Moda Vayuna Bahu Prasara Parirambha Karalakoru Nivistana Labhana Narmana Khagrapate Shvelyavalokah Sitair Rajasundarinam Uttam Bhayanrati Patim Ramayam Chakara. Krishna went with the gopis to the bank of the Yamuna, where the sand was cooling and the wind, enlivened by the river's waves, bore the fragrance of lotuses. There Krishna threw his arms around the gopis and embraced them. He aroused Cupid and their beautiful young ladies of Raj by touching their hands, hairs, thighs, belts, and breasts, and playfully scratching them with his fingernails, and also by joking with them, glancing at them, and laughing with them. In this way, the Lord enjoyed his pastimes. Evam Bhagavata Krishnal Labdamana Mahatmana Atmanam Menire Strinam Maninyo Yadikam Bhuvi. The gopis became proud of themselves for having received such special attention from Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and each of them thought herself the best women on earth. The gopis were proud because they had attained as their lover the greatest of all personalities. So in a sense, they were proud of Krishna. Also, the pride of the gopis was a pretense created by Krishna's pastime potency in order to intensify their love for him through separation. In this connection, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti quotes Bharat Muni's Natya Shastra. Navina vipralambhena sambhoga pastum ashnute. Direct contact is not fully appreciated until separation has been experienced. Tasam tad saubhagya madam vikshamanam cha keshava prashamaya prasadaya tatraivantara dhiyata. Lord Keshava, seeing the gopis too proud of their good fortune, wanted to relieve them of this pride and show them further mercy. Thus he immediately disappeared. The word prasadaya here is significant. Lord Krishna was not going to neglect the gopis, rather he would increase their power of their loving affairs by making another spectacular arrangement. After all, the gopis were basically proud of Krishna. He also made this arrangement, as we shall see, to show special favor to the beautiful young daughter of King Rishabhanu. Thus end the purports of the humble servants of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, to the 10th canto, 29th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Krishna and the Gopis Meet for the Rasa Dance. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Jai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Krishna.